The evening after Norman Spencer's arrival, the Fat Controller came to see the Ffarquhar Branch engines in their shed.
Good evening, engines.
Ma'am, why is Norman Spencer back here? He'd said you'd asked him to be the director of the Northwest Package Express.
You've already seen him. I was hoping to break the news to you gently.
He was on one of my trains this morning, Miss Hat.
I saw him at a couple of the stations during the day as well, Mom. It was a nasty surprise.
I do apologise, Percy. That was not my intention.
May I ask, Ma'am, what was your intention?
I asked Mr. Spencer to be the director of the Northwest Package Express because I wanted to be a success.
But he tried to dieselise the railway.
He may not know much about railways, Thomas, but as a businessman, he's one of the best I've met. Besides, he shouldn't be having that much direct contact with you.
What do you mean?
Our main liaison with the Northwest Package Express will be their Transport Coordination Officer. That position should be filled soon.
How soon?
Within the next fortnight, I believe. For the moment, the Northwest Package Express will just be running along the Ffarquhar Branch to work out their operations before expanding across all of Sodor. I'll be watching this trial run closely.
Well, I suppose we could see how it goes.
Thank you. I know I'm asking a bit, but I do believe that Norman has changed. As such, I have decided to give him a second chance.
I can understand that, Ma'am.
When you put it like that, Miss Hat, we'll do what we can.
I knew I could count on you.
But that was easier said than done. Over the next few days, the Northwest Package Express began collecting packages and delivering them to destinations along the Ffarquhar Branch. Norman Spencer personally oversaw some operations to ensure things went smoothly. They did, mostly, although there were a few hiccups here and there. One morning, Norman Spencer was supervising the loading of a train at Ffarquhar. He stared down the line.
That Percy is supposed to be here by now. How are we... What are you doing here?
Percy's been delayed at Tory Wreck. The Fat Controller asked me to take his place.
I hope you won't run out of water on the way up. James won't be around to help this time.
I think I know my own capabilities, Mr. Spencer.
Right. We'll get you coupled up and then you can get going. We're already running late enough as is.
Toby glanced over at the station, where Lily was waiting with her coaches.
You do mean once Lily departs, don't you? Passenger trains do have priority.
I am aware of that, Toby. I was the deputy controller of this railway for 3 years.
Alright. Then there's... Hold on. What's that van doing there?
What van?
That green one parked close to the tracks, driver.
That's one of my drivers unloading packages.
You'll need to find a better parking spot. That's too close to the tracks.
Really? Looks to me like you'd be able to make it.
Not from where I'm standing, Mr. Spencer. This is a question of safety. Please ask your driver to move his van.
Are you sure that's needed?
I'm sorry, Mr. Spencer, but I won't be moving this train until I know it's safe to do so. Your driver is parked too close to the tracks.
Fine, have it your way.
Spencer replied, and he strode off to speak to his driver. A few minutes later, the van had been moved out of the way, and Toby departed with the package train. As he did so, he couldn't help feeling a bit concerned. Norman Spencer didn't seem to have changed that much. However, he was being a bit more polite this time round. At least that was something. Toby wasn't the only one who was worried. Lily had overheard every word of the conversation between Toby and Spencer. That conversation was something the Fat Controller needed to know about. After she arrived at Tory Wreck, she called the station master over. He agreed to email the Fat Controller on her behalf. Later that afternoon, Toby was on one of his usual runs. As he arrived at Maithwaite, he spotted the Fat Controller waiting for him.
Good afternoon, Ma'am.
Good afternoon, Toby. I've been informed that there was an incident with the Northwest Package Express train from Ffarquhar this morning.
Did Mr. Spencer make a complaint against me? I only wanted his driver to move his van clear of the tracks. I said that at the time.
No, this came from Lily via our station master. There weren't many details, but the email mentioned a possible health and safety issue.
Oh, I'd better tell you the whole story, Ma'am.
Toby proceeded to do that, recounting every word. When he'd finished, the Fat Controller frowned.
Thank you for telling me, Toby. I'll be having a talk with Norman about this. Safety clearances exist for a reason.
Miss Hat, Emily, there's something I need to say, and I want to make it clear that I'm saying this as a friend, a concerned friend.
What would that be?
I know that there's a lot of negative feelings towards Norman Spencer across the whole railway. It also seems that he still doesn't really know how to talk to engines. Are you sure that asking him to head the Northwest Package Express was a good idea?
Just between us, Toby, I will admit it was a bit of a gamble. As I said a few days ago, Norman Spencer is one of the best businessmen I've met.
I understand that, Ma'am, but from what I've seen, he seems to be just as dismissive of us engines as he was before, although he does seem a bit more polite this time.
If it helps, I am keeping him on a short leash. And there's one other thing that may help.
What would that be, Ma'am?
Norman hadn't read any of the Finn clergyman's books before he went to Copenhagen.
Toby was clear of the station by the time the Fat Controller had finished speaking. She watched him go, lost in thought. As she'd said, this was a bit of a gamble. She hoped it would work out. Meanwhile, Thomas was taking a goods train up to the Ffarquhar quarry. He was making good time, and his run had been uneventful so far. A movement to the right caught his eye, and he glanced over, spotting a Northwest Package Express van heading along the road beside the railway line. Thomas whistled hello, but there was no response from the driver. A moment later, they approached a shared bridge, where road and railway run together. For safety reasons, trains have right of way over cars. Thomas didn't slow down, expecting the courier van to stop, but to his horror, it drove straight on.
Stop! Stop!
The van sped up, careening onto the bridge in front of Thomas. His driver applied the brakes.
No!
Thomas, are you alright? Thomas didn't reply. His eyes were still tightly shut. You'd better call the quarry and tell them what happened. Have them get that idiot Courier's license plate. I'll go check on Thomas, Thomas's driver said to the fireman. He climbed down to check on the tank engine.
Not crossing again, not crossing again.
Thomas's driver returned to his cab. It's no good, Jim. I think he's in shock. Shock? Are you sure? I'm afraid so. We'll have to clear the line and take a good look at him. That's been sorted out. The quarry's sending Mavis down. A short while later, Mavis arrived. She gently buffered up to Thomas.
Are you alright, Thomas?
Thomas didn't reply. He kept his eyes tightly closed, and seemed to be muttering something over and over again. Mavis listened closely.
Not crossing again, not crossing again.
You're safe, Thomas. I'm going to take you up to the quarry.
Mavis wasn't sure if Thomas had heard her or not, but as she got the train underway, she hoped he would be alright. When they reached the quarry, Mavis shunted Thomas into a siding, then went to take care of his trucks. The van's driver had been reported to the police. Given that Thomas needed to recover, Mavis took his return train down. Mavis reached Ffarquhar a short while later, and smoothly pulled into the yard. As she did so, she noticed a well-dressed man waiting by some vans.
Is that Norman Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Spencer, I'd like a word with you. One of your drivers cut in front of Thomas on the quarry road.
The quarry road? He's not even meant to be going up there. That's too rough for the delivery vans.
Too bloody right he shouldn't be going up there. He nearly caused an accident, and he's been reported to the police.
But no one was hurt. Surely it's not worth calling the police. I mean, I'd have heard by now if it was something serious.
This is serious, you blithering buffoon. Thomas is up at the quarry right now, in a state of shock. He won't be able to go back to work for a few hours, if at all today.
What?
What? Why would Thomas go into shock?
What sort of question is that? This crossing accident was all over the news. Where have you been for the last 2 years?
Copenhagen.
Mr. Spencer, perhaps I should explain. 2 years ago, Thomas hit a car that ran a level crossing. The occupants survived, but only just. It had quite an effect on Thomas.
He was muttering about it when I pulled him off the bridge. That's all he was saying.
It's a narrow bridge, Mr. Spencer, with our tracks running up the middle of the road.
That sounds like a risky arrangement to me.
It was the only way to get both road and railway through. Now can you imagine how it would scare an engine to have a car cut in front of us at that spot? especially an engine who's already felt a vehicle under his buffers.
I take your point, Toby. The police will have full cooperation from the Northwest Package Express. This accident shall remain an isolated incident.
With that, Spencer left.
Well, that's something.
But he's still missing the point. This isn't an isolated incident, Mavis. It's just the most dangerous one.
Later that evening, Thomas returned to the sheds. He'd finished recovering a little while ago and had brought one of the quarry trains down.
Are you alright, Thomas?
I am, Percy. Thank you.
I'm glad to hear it. What does Spencer think he's playing at, letting his people act like that?
Exactly, Percy. That's 2 safety incidents in one day, both involving the Northwest Package Express.
2? What was the second one?
Oh, that was one of their drivers at Ffarquhar.
Toby said, and he explained what had happened.
His grandfather was just the same. It appears that some people never change.
I'm not too sure about that, Lily.
What do you mean, Toby?
Mr. Spencer mentioned that time I broke down on the main line and James had to push me to the works.
Yes, that was a bit of a cheap shot.
I thought so too, at the time. But then Miss Hatt pointed out that he hadn't read the Finn clergyman's books, at least not before he went to Copenhagen.
Even so, that remark was not called for.
Not phrased in that way, no, but I've been considering it. From Mr. Spencer's perspective, he was just asking about a possible operational issue.
Asking with all the tact of a troublesome truck. Even Sheffield is more polite than that.
I agree he could have been more tactful, but it's not the first time we've met someone who doesn't know how to speak to engines.
You've got a point, Toby, but Mavis told me that Spencer called that near miss up at the quarry an isolated incident. We all know that his drivers normally carry on like that.
Exactly, Percy. Mr. Spencer is responsible for his people's conduct, even if he has read the Railway series.
Silence fell for a moment, then the conversation shifted to other matters. Early the next morning, Percy was making good time on his first run down from Ffarquhar. He was soon approaching Tory Wreck. A slight smile crossed his face as he saw Norman Spencer waiting on the platform.
I've been informed you wanted to see me, Percy.
That's right, Mr. Spencer. There's something I think you should know about, if you want the Northwest Package Express to work out.
What would that be?
That incident with Thomas yesterday wasn't isolated. You must know this. You saw your driver parked too close to the tracks with Toby yesterday morning.
Well, yes, but that was just a minor thing.
Yet it was still a safety violation. But would you have heard about it if you hadn't been there?
I don't suppose so, no.
Exactly. Now let me ask you another question, Mr. Spencer. How many of these minor things are caused by your people daily?
Well, given what you've just said, I can't really answer that.
Isn't that something you should be able to answer? These people are your responsibility after all.
I haven't seen anything like that going on, aside from that incident with Toby, that is.
Of course not. They behave when you're there. Shall I show you what I mean?
What do you have in mind?
If you hide in my cab, you'll see how your people act when they think you're not around.
Very well, Percy. I'll climb aboard once you have done your shunting here. I don't want to get in the way.
Thank you.
A little while later, Percy had finished his shunting and Spencer had cancelled his appointments for the morning. With Spencer in his cab, Percy headed off. Percy's run went well until they reached Maithwaite. A Northwest Package Express van was waiting by the siding.
Driver, that van's too close to the siding.
You're right, Percy.
Excuse me, could you move your van? It's too close to the line.
It's not that close. Besides, you can get one of those vans in here before they reach my van.
Please move your van out of the way.
How about you worry about the shunting and I'll worry about where my van is,
Have it your way.
Percy replied, exasperated. He slowly began shunting the package vans into the siding, knowing what would come next.
Stop! Stop!
Percy did so, with the rear of his trucks just inches away from the delivery van.
What are you doing? You're about to hit my vehicle! You've already got one van into the siding. Do you not know where the end of your train is?
I know exactly where the end of my own train is. I also know I need to deliver 2 vans to this siding, not 1. Now, are you going to move your van or shall I continue my shunting?
Give me a minute.
Your director will be hearing about this.
It's your word against mine. He's not going to listen to an engine like you.
I think I can speak for myself, Jones. I'm disappointed by this cavalier attitude of yours. It's plainly obvious you're in the wrong, yet you carry on as though you're not. This is no way to treat a colleague.
A colleague?
When these engines are pulling package vans, they're technically working for the Northwest Package Express. But we've not got time to argue. You've already delayed Percy long enough.
But Mr. Spencer,
But nothing. Move your van clear of the siding, then finish your rounds. I'll expect you in my office at 1400 hours to explain to me why you should remain employed by the Northwest Package Express.
Yes, Mr. Spencer.
A few minutes later, Percy had finished his shunting. He headed out onto the branch line, with Spencer back in his cab.
Toby was right about you, Mr. Spencer.
How so, Percy?
You've changed a lot since 2009. I mean, you came in on my side of the argument just then, and it seems you've read the Thin Clergyman's books as well. Did something happen to change your mind about us engines?
You lot don't miss a thing, do you? You're right, Percy. Something did happen. The bank I was working for in Copenhagen had sponsored the restoration of a steam locomotive. Given my experience here on Sodor, they decided I should be the representative at her unveiling. I wasn't too keen on the idea, but I went. When I was introduced to her, she was incredibly grateful, kept telling me how much this meant to her. Before my bank had put up the money, she'd been quite worried she wouldn't be restored at all. She was overjoyed to be running again and thanked me on my bank profusely. That was when I began to get it, Percy. You engines do have feelings like the rest of us. It was quite an epiphany.
What was her name? The engine, I mean.
Abigail.
Both tank engine and human fell silent then, each lost in their own thoughts. That evening, in the Ffarquhar Branch sheds, Percy was telling the others about his earlier conversation with Spencer.
So, that was when he began to get it?
He finished.
That would explain a bit.
I overheard Mr. Spencer scolding his driver this afternoon. He seemed quite sincere.
I'm glad you think so, Lily.
All four engines looked over to see Norman Spencer and the Fat Controller standing by the sheds.
Good evening, engines. Mr. Spencer and I are here because we've got something important to ask you.
What would that be, Mum?
As I told you a couple of weeks ago, the Northwest Package Express operations on your branch line were a trial run before they expanded across all of Sodor. We'd like your thoughts on how that's been going.
The four engines exchanged a look. They'd been so busy that they hadn't really thought about how the Northwest Package Express was performing.
There's something I have to ask before I can answer that, Miss Hat. Mr. Spencer, what happened to that driver Percy encountered this morning? The one you met at 2 o'clock?
He's no longer employed by the Northwest Package Express, Toby. I asked him to justify his carelessness. He could not.
I see. Do you think your people got the message?
I should think so.
Then if you keep your people under control, Mr. Spencer, I think the Northwest Package Express can be rolled out.
Thank you, Thomas.
Over the next couple of weeks, the Northwest Package Express expanded their operations across the whole railway. On top of this, they also started deliveries to destinations along the Isledale and Skarloey railways, using the narrow gauge trains to reach as many customers as possible. Naturally, the other engines were wary of working with Norman Spencer and his people, but there were no further incidents. As Christmas approached, the operations of the Northwest Package Express appeared to be off to a smooth start. However, I'm afraid to say that this comfortable state of affairs wasn't to last. But I shouldn't say any more, or I'll spoil the next story.